I swear, I still feel my hands shaking every time I think about that moment. The moment I walked outside, expecting to see my brand new car sitting in the driveway, gleaming under the sun exactly where I parked it the night before. Only to find a completely empty space. My heart literally dropped. At first, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. I remember blinking a few times, rubbing my eyes, even checking my pockets like maybe I had the keys mixed up with something else. But no, the space was empty. My car, the car I spent years saving for, was gone, and the only thing worse than that realization was the one that hit me a few minutes later. It wasn't stolen by some thief in the middle of the night. It wasn't towed, it wasn't misplaced. My own parents took it, and they didn't take it because of an emergency or because something terrible happened. They took it because my older sister needed it more. That's what they said. That's what they yelled at me later. But in that moment, all I knew was that my biggest achievement, something I bought with my own money, my own effort, had been ripped away from me by the people who were supposed to love me. Tell me sincerely before I explain the rest. Was I wrong for what I did afterwards? Was pressing charges too far? Would you have done what I did? I guess I should start from the beginning because, trust me, this whole thing didn't happen out of nowhere. It was building for years, years of favoritism, years of being treated like some afterthought while my sister, Elena, was treated like the second coming of some royal figure. She's 3 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she has been the golden child. You know the type. She could fail classes, and my parents would say the teachers were unfair. She could crash a borrowed car, and my parents would blame the roads. She could scream, lie, manipulate, ruin family gatherings, bring home boyfriends that treated her horribly, and my parents would still comfort her like she was some fragile angel. Meanwhile, if I made even the tiniest mistake, I got lectures, punishments, guilt, trips, silent treatment, you name it. Growing up, I used to think maybe I really was the problem. Maybe she actually did deserve more. Maybe the universe just worked differently for her. But then I grew up, got a job, started supporting myself, and realized, no, my parents just never tried with me the way they bent over backwards for her. For context, I'm 23 now. I've been working since I was 18, doing everything from retail to warehouse shifts to eventually getting a decent office job. I saved every penny I could because I had this dream of buying a car, my car. Something I earned, something nobody could take credit for. I didn't grow up with much. We weren't rich, and my parents always told me I needed to lower my expectations. So I did what I had to do. I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, minded my own business, and saved. When I finally hit my goal, I went to the dealership and bought the exact car I wanted. A 2024 Honda Civic Sport, black with the upgraded interior. It wasn't a luxury car or anything crazy, but to me, it was huge. It was everything. The day I drove it home, I felt so proud I actually cried in the parking lot before stepping inside. I expected my parents to be happy for me, maybe even a little bit proud, but the moment they saw it, I instantly felt the energy drop. My mom's first words weren't congratulations or good job. No, she said, wow, you should have told us before buying something so expensive. My dad shook his head and said, I hope you understand that owning a car comes with responsibilities. You're not a kid anymore. And my sister, she looked at it like it was already hers. She even said, black, ugh, I would have gotten white. That was it. That was the whole reaction, not even a smile. I remember standing there holding my keys, the excitement draining out of me like someone pulled a plug. But still, at least it was mine. I didn't buy it for them. I bought it for me, and for the next few weeks, driving it felt like freedom, like independence. Everything would have stayed perfect if not for my sister completely messing up her own life again. She'd been struggling financially after quitting her job for the 4th time in 2 years. She had rent due, bills piling up, no savings, and worst of all, her old car finally died. It wasn't even a dramatic breakdown. It just stopped starting one morning. Instead of figuring out a plan like a normal adult, she ran crying to my parents, whining about how the universe was against her, how nobody supported her, how life was unfair. And like always, my parents dropped everything to comfort her. They gave her money, they offered to help her find a new job, they even suggested she move back home, which she refused because she wanted freedom. But none of that surprised me. What surprised me was how quickly their eyes landed on my car. I remember coming home one night after work. I walked in and found all three of them sitting in the living room, looking strangely serious. My mom asked me to sit. My dad cleared his throat, and then, like they were making some noble announcement, they told me they wanted me to lend my car to my sister until she got back on her feet. I laughed. I genuinely thought it was a joke. I'd only had the car for 2 months. I said no immediately. Not rudely, not angrily, just no. I told them I'd worked hard for it, that I needed it to get to work, that I wasn't comfortable handing over something so expensive to someone who historically didn't take care of anything. But the moment I said no, the entire room turned against me. My mom accused me of being selfish. My dad said I was being dramatic. My sister rolled her eyes and said, "It's just a car, stop being so possessive." The argument escalated fast. They kept insisting, kept guilt tripping, kept telling me families support each other. But what they meant was that I should sacrifice my comfort to fix the consequences of my sister's irresponsibility. I didn't budge. Over the next week, I could feel the tension thickening. My parents were cold, passive-aggressive, making comments like, "Some people only think of themselves." Or, "I don't know what we did wrong raising such a selfish child." My sister kept slamming doors, sighing loudly, and making TikTok videos about toxic siblings who don't support you. I ignored it all. My car was mine, end of story, except it wasn't. The night before everything went down, I parked my car in the driveway like usual. I locked it, double-checked it, went inside, went to sleep, and around 9 a.m. the next morning, I walked outside and saw that horrifying empty space. I think my brain shut down for a solid 30 seconds. I started pacing. I looked up and down the street. I checked the garage even though I knew damn well it wasn't in there. When I finally stumbled back inside, my parents were at the kitchen table having tea like nothing was wrong. I asked them immediately if they'd seen my car. My voice was shaking so hard I could barely speak. They didn't even look surprised. My mom calmly said, "Oh, Elena took it. She needed it for work. She'll bring it back later." I swear the world slowed down. I felt something burning in my chest, something between rage and disbelief. I said, "You what?" louder than I've ever yelled in my life. My dad told me not to raise my voice. My mom told me I was being dramatic. My sister wasn't even home. She had just taken my keys off my dresser while I slept. The final punch, my parents admitted they unlocked my door while I was asleep because we needed to get the spare key. That was when something inside me snapped. I told them they had no right. They argued that they did. I told them this was theft. They said it was family borrowing. I told them I'd call the police. They laughed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. My mom even said, "You wouldn't dare get your own sister in trouble. Don't be stupid." And that was it. That was the moment I realized something I should have realized years ago. They would never see me as an equal. They would never respect me. They would never treat me like a real adult with boundaries. They believed everything I owned belonged to the family, and everything my sister ruined should be fixed by someone else. I walked to my room, shaking, grabbed my phone, sat on the edge of my bed, and dialed 911. My hands were trembling so badly I kept hitting the wrong numbers, but I got it eventually. When the dispatcher answered, I felt a weird mix of terror and relief. I reported my car stolen. I gave them the model, plate number, color, everything. And when they asked if I suspected anyone, I told them exactly who took it, my sister. I told them she had no permission. I told them the keys were taken without my knowledge. The dispatcher asked if I wanted to press charges. And without hesitating, I said yes. When I came out of my room, my parents were still at the table. I didn't say a word, I didn't owe them one. I just waited. About 30 minutes later, my sister called. She sounded panicked, asking why there were police lights behind her. I told her flatly, because you stole my car. Then I hung up. But before I tell you what happened when the police finally pulled her over, let me ask you again, what would you have done? Seriously, if you worked for years to buy something precious to you, something you needed, something you earned, and your own family stole it, would you have stayed quiet? Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Because in that moment, standing there watching my parents' faces twist with disbelief as sirens echoed down our street, I felt both guilt and satisfaction twisting together inside me. And trust me, the fallout that came next, it changed everything. The sound of the sirens grew louder and closer until I could see the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the walls of my house. My parents were frozen, like deer caught in headlights, while my sister was on the phone pacing around the driveway, clearly trying to figure out how to explain herself. When the police car finally stopped in front of the house, I felt this strange mix of fear and vindication. Fear because, well, it was the police, and I wasn't used to involving them in family drama. Vindication because finally, someone was going to treat my boundaries with respect. The officer stepped out, tall, calm, and professional, and I went up to him, keys still in my hand, my heart pounding in my ears. I explained everything, from the moment I bought the car to how my sister had taken it without permission, to my parents' insistence that it was just lending it. He listened without interrupting, taking notes, and when I was done, he nodded. He said they would go and speak to my sister, verify everything, and make sure the vehicle was returned. That little nod felt like the first ounce of acknowledgement I had ever gotten from my parents, that what they did was wrong. The police asked me to stay put while they approached my sister. I remember watching her face when they walked up to her car. I swear it was a mix of confusion, panic, and indignation, like she couldn't believe the world had dared to treat her the way she treated me every single day. One of the officers spoke to her quietly, while another walked back and forth between her car and the house. I overheard bits of the conversation, her saying, "It's my family, it's fine, he'll understand," and the officer calmly telling her that stealing someone else's property, even a sibling, was against the law. The surreal part, she actually argued with him, pointing at our house and saying they said I could borrow it, and the officer simply shook his head and asked for my side. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about respect, fairness, and finally, my voice being heard. Eventually, they walked back to me. The officer looked at my parents and said, "Sir, ma'am, this is a civil matter that has escalated into theft because the vehicle was taken without consent. We will need the car returned immediately and a report filed." My parents' faces were pale, their mouths moving but no words coming out. My dad finally muttered something about we didn't think it would get this far, while my mom just kept shaking her head. My sister was arguing until the officer told her to remain quiet or face additional charges. She glared at me, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't feel scared. I felt like I was standing in the center of a storm that I had finally learned how to navigate. The car was returned within minutes. My sister tried to grab the keys as if she could claim them back by force, but the officer handed them straight to me. That moment, holding my keys in my hand again, felt like a reclamation of everything. Not just the car, but my sense of autonomy, my right to make choices, my insistence that I would not be treated like a doormat. My parents were silent. The silence was louder than any shouting, louder than any argument we had ever had. I realized then that their strategy, the way they had always tried to manipulate me, was crumbling. They had underestimated me. They had assumed that guilt and familial loyalty would stop me from standing up. They were wrong. After the police left, the house was tense, like a bomb had gone off and everyone was pretending to ignore the smoke. My sister retreated to her room, slamming the door behind her. My parents tried to corner me in the living room, but I refused to engage. I remember my dad saying, "You went too far, you didn't have to involve the police." And I said, "No, you went too far when you stole my car and treated me like nothing. I didn't involve the police to be cruel. I involved them because you didn't respect me." My mom tried to cry, tried to guilt me, tried the silent treatment, tried everything they always did, but I had changed. That night, I realized I had grown into my own person, and nothing they did could make me doubt myself anymore. The next few days were intense. My sister refused to speak to me, my parents avoided me at all costs, and every interaction was icy and awkward. I filed the official report with the police, pressing charges formally. I expected my parents to flip, to scream, to try and manipulate me back into submission, but they didn't. They just accepted it, muttering under their breath, glaring at me whenever possible, but they did nothing to undo it. And that, more than anything, was satisfying. The justice wasn't just legal, it was psychological. I had stood my ground, and they had nothing to say about it. At work, I tried to focus, but every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the moment I walked out to find my car gone, the panic, the betrayal, the rage, and finally, the triumph when it was returned. Friends were shocked when I told them what happened. Some told me I had gone too far. Some told me I did the right thing, but it didn't matter. I had taken control of my life in a way I never had before. I realized something fundamental. Family is not always safe, and sometimes you have to fight for yourself, even if the people you love the most are on the other side. The legal process was surprisingly straightforward. My sister had to meet with the police multiple times, answer questions, and the report was filed officially. She was required to return the car immediately and could not use it without my consent. Beyond that, the police gave her a warning and a small fine. The real victory was symbolic. The world now recognized that I had rights, that I wasn't a child, and that stealing from me, even by my family, had consequences. My parents tried to lecture me on how this would affect family relationships, how it would scar her, but I didn't flinch. I had been scarred for years by favoritism and disrespect, and I had finally drawn the line. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to a tense normal. My sister sulked and complained constantly. My parents were stiff and awkward, trying to maintain some sense of authority without overstepping now that they knew I wouldn't back down. I kept my distance, spent more time with friends, and for the first time in my life, I felt free from their manipulations. I drove my car everywhere with a renewed sense of pride, each mile a reminder that I had fought for something that was mine. I even started saving more aggressively, realizing that independence and self-reliance were the only things that truly mattered. And you know what's wild? The aftermath revealed a lot about people's true colors. Friends and extended family started noticing the shift. Suddenly, people were coming to me for advice, for rides, for support, because they realized I had boundaries and wasn't afraid to enforce them. My sister tried to manipulate others against me, claiming I was cruel and selfish. Some believed her, some didn't. But that didn't matter either. I had learned to trust myself above all else, and that confidence radiated outward. Looking back now, I can see this as a turning point in my life. That incident, as dramatic and painful as it was, became a lesson in self-respect, courage, and the importance of boundaries. I realized that love and loyalty should never come at the cost of being treated like a doormat. I realized that sometimes the hardest choices, the ones that scare you the most, are the ones that define your life. Pressing charges against my sister was terrifying. It was uncomfortable, emotionally draining, and it risked tearing my family apart. But in the end, it preserved me. It preserved my dignity, my sense of justice, and my right to be treated as an equal human being. Of course, things are still complicated. My parents aren't suddenly perfect. My sister still complains, still rolls her eyes, still tries to guilt-trip me, but I don't let it affect me. I have my car, my independence, and my voice, and that's enough. I learned that day, and in the days after, that you cannot rely on people even family, to always do the right thing. Sometimes, you have to take matters into your own hands, and if that means calling the police and pressing charges against someone you love, then so be it. Because some battles aren't about revenge, they are about protecting yourself. So if you've been in a situation where someone you trusted crossed a line, where someone took what was yours, or where people around you tried to gaslight you into submission, I want you to remember this: standing up for yourself isn't cruel. It isn't selfish, it isn't wrong, it's necessary. And when you do it, when you find the courage to assert your rights and defend your boundaries, you'll realize something powerful. You are stronger than you ever thought. If you're on my side, if you understand why I did what I did, go ahead and like this video. If you want more stories where ordinary people take extraordinary stands, hit that subscribe button and join the community. And don't hold back. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. Tell me if you would have done the same or if you would have handled it differently. I want to hear your take, because this story is as much about choices as it is about consequences. Thanks for sitting through this with me. Thanks for listening to my side, my truth, and I'll see you all in the next story.